Welcome to this Sahara 4 exercise. In this exercise, we will discuss the generation of well and layer states, which is a necessary step in creating flow elements, which is one of the main components of the secondary recovery simulator. The well states are necessary for several other reasons, but we will discuss them now, how to create them or how to import them. For that, we will open our Sahara project. And now that we have our production data imported from the previous exercise, we can use this information to create the states corresponding to well and layers. Regarding states, we have two different options. We can either import the state of the layers with 0 or 1 indicating close or open, as we will do with the layer states. We will define which layers are open and which are closed with an external Excel file importing the information. Or based on the production data that we have available, we can generate the states. That's what we will do with the well state, which will define if the well is a oil producer or a water injector. We will do it based on the information that is already imported from the database that we did in the previous exercise. First, we will do the generation of the state at the well level. For that, we will go to Tool, General, and now we select Set Object Status. Now we will select all the wells because we want to perform the calculation in all the wells. And now what this tool is going to do is, for every well, is going to ask if the well is either injecting water or producing either oil, gas, or water. If the well is injecting, it's going to be considered an injector. If the well is injecting and producing, is going to be considered as an injector as well in that date. And if the well is only producing but is not injecting anything, it's going to be considered a producer, an oil producer for this calculus. If we select this simplify method, that's everything that the tool is going to do. And if we don't select this, if we leave it like this without the simplify method, we are going to have an extra output that is going to be the gas producer. So what the calculation when the simplify method is not checked, that is done, is basically you decide if the well is injector or producer by either looking for injection in any layer. If the well is injecting, it's considered an injector and that's it. But if the well is not injecting anything in that date, it's classified as a producer, and then the GOR of that well is calculated for that date. And if the GOR exceeds the number that is defined here, that we can define here when we run the tool, the well is going to be considered a gas producer instead of an oil producer. So in this case, when we are not using the simplify method, we are going to have three results: gas producer, oil producer, or water injector for any date. So again, this tool, what it's going to do is perform a calculation defining if the state of the well at any date, and it's going to repeat the calculation for every well at every date. So we are going to know, without knowing anything about what is happening inside the layers specifically, but at a well level, we are going to know if the well is either a gas producer, a oil producer, or a water injector. Or if we use the simplify method, we are just going to have the differentiation between producer and injector. In this case, for this calculation, we will use the simplify method, so we are just going to have two different results, producer or injector, and we are going to click on calculate. And now we have our states defined. Now we are going to check if the calculations were done correctly. So now we are going to close this window. We will check if we have the correct symbols in the map. So now we are going to go to objects. Having previously opened this tab here, we'll go to objects. First, we will go to symbols here, and we will ask for some references to understand what each symbol is going to represent. And also we have to check that the type of the symbols is in simulator. Here we can define different types of symbols. For example, we can check here static is going to assign an attribute, static attribute to the symbols of the wells in the map. For example, if we use here static status, we are going to see, well, in this case we don't have defined a symbol yet for each one, but the symbol that is going to be represented is going to depend on the status that was loaded when the objects were created. In this case, we are going to use just the simulator type. So the simulator type, what is going to show is how how the well is defined as a producer or injector, or if the status is defined as a gas producer as well, in each date. But it should also show us when that well is open in that layer, but we haven't yet loaded that information. So in this case, what we are going to see is that the status of open or close is going to be undefined because that information hasn't been calculated yet, or hasn't been generated or hasn't been imported yet. That information is going to be on a per layer basis. The only thing that we have now is the object status that is defined on the well level, which means that we don't know exactly where we are injecting or where we are producing, but we know that the well is either an injector or a producer. We don't know in which layer we are producing or in which layer we're injecting yet in the status sense. So now when we move here, first all the wells are going to be undefined because these objects hasn't been really drilled yet. That doesn't have any information regarding production. So from the point of view of the status, they still doesn't exist in a sense because they haven't been drilled yet in this date in 1958. But if we advance over here, some wells are going to change their status, and now we see that we have some primary producers over here. But if you look at the references, we can see that even if they are classified as producers, they are close, and it doesn't matter which layer I choose. They're going to be all of them are going to be closed because we haven't yet imported or generate the information at a layer level. The Sahara does know that the well is a producer because it is checking that we don't have any injection in that well at that moment in this date, but it doesn't know from where the production is coming from, or in the case that we have an injector, where we are injecting, in which layer. So everything is going to appear close. The states are not yet completely generated. We haven't yet finished. So if we move forward just a little bit, we will see that more and more wells are added, and then we have our first injector. This is going to be checked on the information that we imported previously, the production and injection information, that in this date, this well, D32, did have its first injection data. So from now on, the well will be considered an injector as long as it keeps injecting water. It can be reconverted if we have a future period where the well doesn't inject anything and it's just producing, but from now on it will be an injector in this case, and we see that more and more wells are converted to injectors and more wells are going from undefined, which means that they don't have any information yet, neither production nor injection, and now they are turning into either injectors or producers depending on which information we have loaded in each well. But check that it doesn't matter which layer I select, nothing is going to change because we don't know yet what is going on in the layers. But that is about to change now because we are going to import the layer status information. So now we go to project, import, status, layer status. We have already generated the object status as we have discussed previously. So now we go to layer status. Now we look for our Excel where we have all our information and look for the Excel sheet status, layer status. And now, as we can see, we have an Excel file here where we have the ID of the well, which is the name of the well, the ID selected. In this case, it's just going to be the name. We are going to use all identifiers, so we ensure that all the identifiers are used. That we are not missing any information due to how the well is named in each row. Here, the layer where we are referring to, where we will make the change and indicate that in this date the the layer was either closed or open, so the layer is necessary. Here the date where the change is going to happen, and here the status of the layer in that date. 1 for open, 0 for close. So we are going to import this. As we can see, everything is set. Now we should see the change in the layer status. And now Sahara is going to know in which layers, in which date, the state of producer or injector is either open or closed for each one. And now we see that we have a report, an import report here, which everything was fine. We imported 883 states of the status of the layers, and we close. And now we can see that we have water injector closed, water injector open, oil producer open, and oil producer closed. Now we have both informations loaded correctly into the project. This means that, for example, in the layer 34, for the wells, for example, this well was actively injecting in this layer, but this well, even if it was an injector, it wasn't injecting in this layer. This layer was closed at this date. However, we can see that this probably can change in the over time. For example, some wells might change from open to close in some layers, and we can see how the project evolves over time. Here we see that the this well was injecting in this layer, and also something that is important to consider as well is that on the layer tab we can check in which layers we're injecting. If this is in blue over here, it means that the well for this date where we are stepping on here in the slider, the well is injecting in this layer, this layer, this layer, this layer, this one, and this one. For example, not in this one, where we don't have any injection yet in this layer. Also, we can do the same for producers. For example, this producer is only producing from this layer, this layer, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. So we can check quickly where in which layers we are producing, in which layers we are injecting, and we can do it either by selecting the layer and see the status of the wells, or by selecting the well and see the layer tab and checking which one have different color. If we select several wells, more and more layers are going to be added, because in this case we are going to check all the layers in which at least one of these three wells is injecting. Same go for producers. If we select three producers, we are going to see that more layers are selected with the green color, because this is going to show the layers in which at least one of the three producers are producing from those layers, based on the information that we imported and the status that we calculated for the well. And finally, if we select an injector and a producer, the ones where we are having injection and production from the same layer will be selected in red. This means that in the case of this per injector producer, the layer 17 is only being produced but it's not being injected by D32. It means that we have in a sense we have primary recovery yet with this layer, that we are injecting but not producing in 26, for example. In the layer 7 we are injecting but we are not producing, which means that probably other producer of the pattern is producing this is producing what is being injected here, but not in this one because it's not open in this producer. And finally, for the layers 22, 23, 30, 31, we are producing and injecting, which means that we could create a flow element between this injector and this producer for this layer in particular. So with this we can navigate how the different layers evolve over time, and also how the state of the well changes over time in each layer. Here we can see, for example, that at this time this well was converted, and then maybe it had other layers open afterwards. So now we have plenty more information on what the state of the wells are, what the state of the layers are, how we can change and check in which layers or in which wells we have either production or injection. We can also we also check how to change the different type of symbols in the well. We will do more exercises with this last point, but for now remember that if you want to check your status of of wells and layers, remember to use the type symbol simulator, that is to show you the combination of your layer status and your well status. There are other tools that we can use to define the layer status that we haven't used in this example because we imported the information externally, but we will review them quickly, just for you to know that they exist. Here we go to Tools, General, and here in the same menu where we calculated the status of the objects using the simplify method. We in the menu on the right below it, we can see that we have set layer status, and this is going to do exactly the same that we did importing the information with 0 and 1, indicating that the layers are either closed or open. But we have several methods, different methods. We can select for the wells that we want to do the calculation. The layers, we can select them all. This is necessary to check from in which objects we will do the calculation and in which layers. And here we have the different four methods. So the first method, dynamic qualifier data, basically allows you to define if the layer is open or closed based on the information of interventions. If, for example, you have perforations, if you have a packer, if you have a plug that and you have it loaded in the intervention window, you can use this to define that the layer is closed in that layer in that date. For example, if I put a plug isolating all the last intervals in a well, for example, from 46 downhole, you can use this method, and Sahara is going to calculate that everything below the plug is going to be closed. And for example, if I use a packer to isolate everything from the layer 6 upwards, is also going to check that, and is also going to isolate everything in that date, in the date of intervention, to consider that change in the state of the layers. It's also going to consider if you have perforations, if you have cementations, and it's going to do the calculation based on the intervention data. Here, with the layer injection and production, this is very similar to what we did for the calculation of the object status. This is going to be pretty much the same, but instead of using the whole data of the well to check if the well is either a producer, an injector, or a gas producer, is going to use the information loaded of production for each layer, and is going to assign a production to the layer where it finds any data of production. For example, if I in a well I have loaded production coming from this layer, this layer, and this layer, it's going to open them as soon as it sees a production data in that date. So this is the most common method to calculate the the layer status, other than importing it externally, as we did in the example. Another method is the layer thickness. In this case, what we can do is generate the states based on the thickness of coming from petrophysical data. We can use any of the thickness loaded as petrophysical data that we imported in this project in a previous exercise, and we are going to select the minimum value. For example, in this case, we can say that everything that has a net thickness greater than 5, for example, is going to be considered open at any date. Something that is relevant to consider here is that as layer thickness or any other petrophysical data is not time dependent, the open status is going to be assigned at the well start date from then on. So it's just going to do the calculation or the consideration of the well start date, and then thickness cannot change over time. So it's just going to keep it open to up to the end date of the well. And then the last method is interval data. That this option also generates the data from the wellbore data, similar to the dynamic qualifier data, but it's going to previously calculate the status of the zone associated with each layer. So once it does have the state of the zone associated with each layer, it's going to calculate the state of the layers. So in this case, it will be also based on wellbore data. Normally, the most common is coming just from the data of injection and production, if you have it available. If not, probably the next more common is dynamic qualifier data. But we do have normally the information coming from wellworks is available to consider for the opening or closing the layers. Otherwise, just it can both the object status and the layer status can be just imported, and that will be everything that we need to define them. So well, we have reached the end of this exercise. I hope it was useful. Um, Thank you for watching.